When Wonder Woman crashes into Warhammer, she does something no one has done in 10,000 years. She looks the God Emperor in the eye and refuses to kneel. Armed with a lasso that compels absolute truth, she tears through the Imperium's lies, faces down Daemon princes who offer her godhood, and forces the master of mankind himself into an impossible choice. But in a galaxy where even the Emperor demands the sacrifice of innocence for humanity's survival, can Diana's unbreakable moral code survive, or will the grim darkness finally break the one hero who has never compromised? The void above Ophelia 7th split like a wound, bleeding violet lightning across the night sky. Sister Militaris Irena stood watch atop the Basilica of St. Celestine, her bolter clutched tight as the impossible tear widened. She had seen many horrors in her 15 years serving the Emperor, but nothing like this. The warp storm twisted reality itself, making the stars scream colors that had no names. Through her vox bead, she heard Canoness Superior Agatha's voice, steady as iron. All units to defensive positions. This is not a drill. The Emperor protects, but we must be his instrument. Irena moved to her post, joining her sisters along the basilica's marble walls. Below them, the shrine city of Ophelia spread out in concentric rings, millions of faithful citizens going about their evening prayers, unaware of the doom spiraling toward them. Something fell from the cosmic wound. Not a ship or a daemon, a woman, falling like a meteor wrapped in golden light. She descended without thrust packs or grav chutes, simply falling with purpose and grace. The sight was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Then the true nightmare began. A second rift tore open, this one oozing sickly colors that made Irena's stomach twist. From it came ships that looked like they had been grown rather than built, their hulls decorated with obscene art that hurt to look at directly. The Emperor's children had arrived, traitor Astartes, who had turned from the Emperor's light 10,000 years ago to worship the dark god Slanesh. Drop pods screamed through the atmosphere like falling stars. They crashed into the shrine city's outer districts, crushing hab blocks and scattering civilians. From each pod emerged giants in power armor painted in garish purples and pinks, their armor writhing with sounds made solid. Noise marines, warriors who had turned music itself into a weapon. The basilica's defense sirens wailed. Citizens fled through the streets as the traitors opened fire. Sonic weapons turned stone to powder and flesh to mist. Irena watched in horror as a blast wave struck a refugee column, and people simply came apart, their bodies unable to withstand the terrible frequencies. Engage. Canoness Agatha's command cut through the chaos. The Sisters of Battle opened fire, their blessed bolters barking prayers with every shot. Irena took aim at a noise marine, advancing through the plaza below. Her bolt round struck his chestplate and detonated, but the traitor merely laughed, the sound amplified by his armor's vox grills until it shattered windows 3 streets away. The battle descended into brutal close quarters. The sisters fought with chained swords and unshakable faith, but the Emperor's children were demigods of war, each one a veteran of 10 millennia of slaughter. For every traitor they brought down, 3 sisters fell. That was when the falling woman struck the battlefield like the Emperor's own lightning. She landed in the plaza's center with such force that marble cracked in a perfect circle around her impact point. When the dust cleared, Irena saw her clearly for the first time, tall and powerfully built, with dark hair that fell past her shoulders. She wore armor of red and blue with gold accents, and stars decorated a tiara on her brow. In one hand she carried a sword that gleamed like captured sunlight. In the other, a golden rope coiled like a living thing. A noise marine turned his sonic blaster toward her, the weapon speakers beginning their deadly song. The woman raised her arms, and silver bracers on her wrists flashed. The sonic blast struck the bracers and simply stopped, the energy dispersing harmlessly. Before the traitor could fire again, she closed the distance between them in a blur of motion. Her sword swept in a perfect arc, and the noise marine's head tumbled from his shoulders, his ancient armor offering no more protection than parchment. The woman moved through the Emperor's children like a saint of old. Her sword cut through ceramide plate as if it were cloth. When 3 traitors surrounded her, she spun her golden rope above her head and lashed out. The rope wrapped around all 3 at once, and where it touched their armor, reality seemed to solidify. They could not move, could not speak. Frozen by some power Irena did not understand. Within minutes, the plaza was cleared. A dozen traitor Astartes lay dead or dying, brought down by a single warrior who moved with grace that made the slaughter look like a dance. The surviving sisters stared in awe and confusion. Only the Adeptus Astartes, the Emperor's own space marines, could fight with such power. Yet this was clearly no space marine. Canoness Agatha descended from the basilica, her power armor servos whining softly. She approached the mysterious warrior with her bolter lowered but ready. "Identify yourself," she commanded. "By whose authority do you fight?" The woman turned to face her, and Irina saw eyes that held both kindness and steel. "I am Diana of Themyscira, daughter of Hippolyta, princess of the Amazons. I fight because the innocent were in danger. I need no other authority." The words were spoken in perfect Gothic, yet with an accent Irina had never heard. The canoness studied Diana for a long moment. "You fight well, warrior. Your skill honors the god emperor, whether you know his light or not. But this battle is far from over." As if summoning them with her words, more drop pods crashed into the city. A full warband of Emperor's children was making planetfall. Hundreds of corrupted space marines supported by cultist thralls and daemon engines. The ground shook as a sonic dreadnought stomped through a cathedral wall, its speakers already building to a deadly crescendo. Diana's expression hardened. "Then we fight together. Show me where I am needed most." For the next 6 hours, Diana fought alongside the Sisters of Battle as they defended the Shrine City street by street. Irina witnessed miracles that day. She saw Diana catch a falling section of wall that would have crushed a squad of sisters, holding tons of stone and steel above her head while they escaped. She saw the golden rope compel truth from a traitor champion before Diana executed him, the rope somehow forcing the corrupted Marine to confess his crimes in a voice choked with genuine remorse. Most amazing of all, she saw Diana face a daemon. The beast crawled from the warp like a cancer-given form, its body too beautiful and too terrible to fully comprehend. It spoke in voices that promised pleasure beyond imagining, whispering directly into the minds of all who beheld it. 3 sisters fell to their knees, their faith cracking under the daemon's seduction. Diana strode forward without hesitation. When the daemon reached for her with claws like razors, she caught its wrist and drove her sword through its heart. The blade burned with a light that was not fire, and the daemon shrieked as it dissolved back into the Imperium. When dawn finally broke over Ophelia VII, the Emperor's children had been driven back to their ships. The Shrine City was saved, though at terrible cost. Nearly 1,000 sisters had fallen, and tens of thousands of civilians lay dead in the rubble. Diana stood in the basilica's main hall, surrounded by exhausted warriors. Dirt and ichor stained her armor, but she remained unbowed. Canoness Agatha approached, and for the first time, Irina heard warmth in her commander's voice. "You saved us, Diana of Themyscira. You fought with honor and courage. Surely the Emperor guided you to us in our hour of need." Diana smiled, but shook her head. "I thank you for your words, Canoness. But I must speak truth. I was not sent by your Emperor. I do not know how I came to be here. Where I come from, I serve the gods of my people. I am daughter of Zeus, king of Olympus, formed from clay by the goddess Hippolyta and given life by the gods themselves. I fight because it is right, not because any deity commands it." The warmth fled from Agatha's expression as if it had never been. Around the hall, sisters gripped their weapons tighter. One word cut through the sudden tension like a blade: heresy. Before anyone could move, the great doors of the basilica crashed open. A figure entered clad in the black armor of the Inquisition, a rosette of authority gleaming on his chest. Behind him marched a full squad of inquisitorial stormtroopers, their hellguns trained on Diana. The man's face was hard as stone, his eyes burning with the certainty of the righteous. "I am Lord Inquisitor Constantin Valdane, of the Ordo Hereticus," he announced, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. "I have monitored this battle from orbit. I have heard your words, creature. You claim descent from false gods. You admit to heresy with your own lips." He drew his bolt pistol in one smooth motion, aiming it directly at Diana's heart. "By the authority of the God Emperor of mankind, I sentence you to death. You will be executed immediately, your body burned, your ashes scattered to the void." Diana did not move. She stood calmly, meeting Valdane's gaze without fear. "I have told you only truth. I will not lie to save myself, but neither will I die without cause. I have harmed no innocent. I have fought your enemies. If you wish to kill me for speaking truth, you must first explain how that serves your Emperor's justice." The canoness stepped between them, her voice tight. "Inquisitor, she saved this world. She fought beside us with honor. Surely there must be investigation before execution." Valdane's expression did not change. Investigation is a luxury afforded to the potentially innocent. This one has confessed. There is nothing more to discuss. He raised his vox. "This is Valdane. I require Astartes support at these coordinates. I have a target that requires full termination protocols." Diana's hand moved to her sword. The stormtroopers tensed. The sisters looked between their savior and the Inquisitor's authority, torn between gratitude and duty. In that moment, Irina understood that the real battle for Ophelia VII was just beginning, and its outcome would determine far more than one warrior's fate. The detention cell was built to hold beings far more dangerous than normal humans. Its walls were 3 feet of blessed ceramite reinforced with scriptures etched in silver. Nullfield generators hummed in the corners, designed to suppress psychic powers. Heavy bolters mounted in the ceiling tracked Diana's every movement. She sat on the metal bench, hands resting calmly on her knees, showing no sign of distress despite her confinement. Canoness Agatha had negotiated a compromise with Inquisitor Valdane. Diana would not be executed immediately, but would submit to investigation and questioning. The sisters had escorted her to their fortress monastery, a massive structure of black stone that had stood for 3,000 years. Now she waited in its deepest dungeon while Valdane assembled his instruments of inquiry. The Inquisitor arrived the next morning with an entourage that spoke of his thoroughness. Tech priests shuffled forward on mechanical legs, carrying scanning equipment that beeped and whirred. A psyker shuffled behind them, his eyes covered with a black cloth, his hands bound in chains that prevented him from making the gestures needed for his witchcraft. 3 scribes followed, ready to record every word. Finally came a theologian from the ecclesiarchy, an old woman whose face was hidden behind a silver mask shaped like a weeping angel. Valdane entered last, his black armor gleaming under the cell's harsh lights. He carried a data slate in one hand and a neural whip in the other, the latter crackling with barely contained energy. "We will begin with your equipment," he stated without preamble. "Surrender your sword, your bracers, and that golden rope. They will be examined." Diana stood slowly, her movements careful and deliberate. "I will allow examination, but these items do not leave my sight. They are sacred relics of my people. To surrender them would be to surrender my duty." Valdane's jaw tightened. "You are in no position to make demands." "I am in exactly the position truth places me." Diana replied calmly, "I have done nothing wrong. I will cooperate with reasonable requests, but I will not be stripped of my identity to satisfy unreasonable fears." The standoff lasted several seconds before Valdane nodded curtly to the tech priests. "Examine her equipment here. If she attempts to use them as weapons, the bolters will end her." The tech priests approached with visible nervousness. The lead adept, his face more machine than flesh, extended a scanning device toward Diana's bracers. The machine buzzed and clicked, its screen filling with data that made the tech priest's remaining organic eye widen. "Inquisitor," he said, his voice half mechanical. "These bracers are reading as impossible. The metal predates human civilization by margins that exceed our measurement capacity. The molecular structure is perfect, showing 0 decay despite age that should be measured in millions of years." Another tech priest examined the sword, running a different scanner along its edge. "This blade cuts at the molecular level. Its edge is exactly 1 atom wide, yet the structural integrity shows no weakness. The energy signature is unknown to our databases. It does not match plasma, power field, or any recognized Imperial technology." The third tech priest reached for the golden rope with obvious reluctance. The moment his augmented fingers touched it, he gasped. "It compels," he whispered. "Not through force, but through reality itself. When I touch it, I cannot conceive of speaking falsehood. The very idea becomes impossible." He pulled his hand back quickly, as if burned. Valdane studied Diana with new intensity. "Where did you acquire these artifacts?" "They were gifts," Diana answered. "The bracers were forged by Hephaestus, god of the forge, from the aegis of Zeus himself. The sword was given to me by Hephaestus as well, made to fight beings of divine power. The lasso was crafted by the god Hephaestus from the golden girdle of Gaia, and it compels those it binds to speak only truth." The theologian stepped forward, her voice muffled by her mask. "You speak of pagan deities as if they were real. You claim gifts from false gods. This is heresy of the most blatant kind. They are not false where I come from. Diana said simply, I met them. I spoke with them. I trained under their guidance. I am not asking you to worship them. I am simply telling you the truth of my existence. Valdane gestured to the psyker. The blind man was led forward by his handlers until he stood directly before Diana, his covered head tilted as if listening to sounds no one else could hear. When he spoke, his voice was distant and echoing. She burns, he whispered. Not with warp energy. Something else, something older. The Imperium touches her and recoils. She is anathema to chaos, but not through the Emperor's light, through something that predates this reality's current rules. Explain, Valdane commanded. The psyker's fingers twitched against his chains. In the oldest times, before humanity rose, there were other powers, the old ones who shaped races as weapons, the Khitan who fed on stars. The wars they fought rewrote the laws of physics. She carries an echo of that age. She is touched by powers that existed before the warp became corrupted, before chaos learned to think. Valdane absorbed this information without expression. Could she be a weapon of the Eldar, some ancient tool reactivated? The psyker shook his head violently. No, the signature is wrong. Not Eldar, not Cetan, something else entirely. A reality that brushed against ours and left this echo behind. The interrogation continued for hours. Valdane asked about Diana's world, her mission, her beliefs. She answered every question with patient honesty. She told them of Earth, though it was an Earth different from ancient Terra. She spoke of heroism and justice, of protecting those who could not protect themselves. She described a world where people had choices, where governments could be questioned, where individual liberty was valued alongside collective security. With each answer, the theologian's posture grew more rigid. Finally, the masked woman could contain herself no longer. Everything you describe is heresy, a world without the Emperor's guidance? Where humans question authority, where alien gods are worshipped openly? Such a world deserves only cleansing fire. Diana met her fury with calm. And yet it was a good world. People lived in peace more often than war. Children grew up expecting to see their parents grow old. Artists created beauty without fear of censorship. Scientists pursued knowledge without restriction. It was not perfect, but it was hopeful. Hope is the first step toward disappointment, Valdane said coldly. In this reality, hope without the Emperor is delusion. Your world sounds like paradise, which means it was illusion waiting to be shattered by the first real threat it encountered. My world faced many threats, Diana countered. Alien invasions, dimensional breaches, gods who turned hostile. We survived them all without sacrificing our humanity in the process. Then you were fortunate or foolish, Valdane replied. In this galaxy, such softness leads only to extinction. He gestured to the scribes, who had been recording everything in frantic shorthand. I have heard enough. The subject claims divine heritage from false gods. She admits to defending values contrary to Imperial doctrine. She carries artifacts of unknown and potentially dangerous origin. My recommendation is clear. Execution followed by full materialization of remains. Canoness Agatha had been standing silently in the corridor outside the cell. Now she entered, her power armor making the small space feel even more cramped. Inquisitor, I must speak. Valdane turned to her with barely concealed irritation. Canoness? This warrior saved my sisters. She fought beside us without hesitation. She showed no signs of corruption or madness. She destroyed a daemon with her own hands. Whatever she is clearly opposed to the forces of chaos. Executing her seems wasteful at best, possibly even counterproductive. Your sentiment is noted and dismissed, Valdane said flatly. The Imperium has no room for unauthorized powers, no matter how benevolent they appear. History teaches us that today's ally becomes tomorrow's threat. Better to eliminate potential problems before they manifest. Diana stood and walked to the cell's energy barrier. It crackled at her approach, but she ignored it. Inquisitor Valdane, she said, her voice carrying a weight that made everyone in the room pay attention. I have answered your questions with complete honesty. Now I would like to ask you one. May I? Valdane's eyes narrowed. You may ask. I am not obligated to answer. Diana reached through the energy barrier, ignoring the way it sparked against her skin, and held out the golden lasso. Then hold this, and answer me truthfully. Do you believe the Imperium you serve is just? Every weapon in the room trained on Diana instantly. The bolters in the ceiling acquired target lock. The stormtroopers raised their hellguns. Valdane's hand moved to his bolt pistol, but he did not draw. For a long moment, he stared at the offered rope, understanding exactly what she was asking. "You would compel me to speak my true beliefs," he said slowly. "I would give you permission to speak them," Diana corrected. "Without fear of consequence, without need to maintain the mask you show the world. Just one moment of pure honesty between us." The room held its breath. Finally, with a gesture that showed tremendous courage or tremendous foolishness, Valdane reached out and grasped the golden rope. His expression immediately shifted, the hard certainty cracking like a broken mask. When he spoke, his voice carried a pain that had been buried under decades of service. "No," he whispered. "The Imperium is not just. It is cruel and wasteful and built on suffering that would make any moral being weep. We burn children because they are born with powers they did not choose. We condemn billions to lives of endless labor in conditions that kill them within years. We destroy entire worlds on suspicion alone. I have personally ordered the deaths of millions who may have been innocent because the risk of their guilt was too great to ignore." Tears ran down his face now, his hand still gripping the lasso as if unable to release it. "And I do these things because I see no alternative. I have studied history. I have seen what happens when humanity shows mercy to its enemies. Chaos does not negotiate. Tyranids do not compromise. Orcs do not show pity. In a galaxy of horrors, the Imperium's cruelty is the only thing that has kept humanity alive for 10,000 years. I hate it. I hate myself, but I see no other way." Diana gently removed the lasso from his grip. Valdane stumbled backward, his face contorting as he regained control of himself. "The masks we wear to survive," she thought, "are often the heaviest burdens we carry. Thank you for your honesty, Inquisitor," she said softly. Valdane wiped his face roughly, fury and shame warring in his expression. "You dare," he began, but Diana interrupted. "I dare because someone must. You asked if my world was real or illusion. I say to you that any reality which requires you to kill your own conscience to survive is the true illusion. You are not evil, Inquisitor. You are wounded. Your entire civilization is wounded, and wounds must be acknowledged before they can heal." Before Valdane could respond, alarms began screaming throughout the fortress. The Vox speakers crackled to life with frantic reports. Contact, multiple contacts, unknown hostiles breaching outer defenses, sisters to defensive positions. The group rushed from the detention level to the fortress's command center. Hololithic displays showed figures moving through the outer courtyards with inhuman speed. They wore robes of dark fabric that seemed to drink in light, and beneath those robes, armor that flowed like water. The attackers moved with grace that made even Diana's fluid motion seem clumsy by comparison. "Eldar," Valdane hissed. "Craftworld raiders. But why here? What do they want?" One of the attackers separated from the group and approached the fortress's main gate alone. She was tall and slender, with features too perfect to be entirely human. She carried no visible weapons, but power radiated from her like heat from a flame. When she spoke, her voice carried through the Vox systems without any technological assistance. "Humans of this monastery, we have not come for war. We seek the one who fell through the warp storm, the one touched by the Old One's legacy. Surrender her to us, and we will depart in peace." Canoness Agatha's hand moved to her bolter. "The Eldar seek you specifically, Diana. How did they know you were here?" "I don't know," Diana admitted. "I have never seen beings like them before." Valdane studied the hololithic display with calculating eyes. "The Eldar are psychic. They could have sensed your arrival through the warp. Whatever you are, you clearly register to their witch site as significant." He turned to Diana with an expression she could not quite read. "This changes the tactical situation. The Eldar do not take interest in humans without reason. They want you, which means you have value to them. That makes you valuable to us as well." "I am not a bargaining chip," Diana said firmly. "Everyone is a bargaining chip in the right circumstances," Valdane replied. "But in this case, I agree. We do not negotiate with Xenos." He activated the Vox. "This is Inquisitor Valdane. All units, engage the Eldar with extreme prejudice. Show them the cost of trespassing on Imperial soil." The battle was brief but vicious. The Eldar moved like ghosts, their weapons cutting through power armor with beams of crystallized light. But the Sisters of Battle fought with the fury of faith, and the fortress's fixed defenses added torrents of fire to the engagement. After 15 minutes of brutal fighting, the Eldar withdrew, leaving a dozen of their own dead behind. But one remained. The leader who had spoken earlier stepped into the fortress's entrance hall, somehow bypassing every defense and guard. She stood in the center of the marble floor, arms spread wide to show she carried no weapons. When she pulled back her hood, Diana saw a face of ageless beauty marked with runes that glowed with soft light. "I am Farseer, Ileana, of Craftworld Ulthwé," she said, her voice like music played on crystal chimes. "I have seen the threads of fate, Diana of Themyscira. You do not belong in this reality. Your presence here creates ripples in the skein of destiny that could unravel in catastrophic ways. But I also see that you are not evil, merely displaced. Come with us. We have the technology to send you home, back to your Earth and your people." Diana felt hope flare in her chest for the first time since her arrival. Home. She could return home, leave this nightmare reality behind, resume her mission in a world that made sense. But even as she considered it, her eyes fell on Canoness Agatha and the sisters who had fought beside her. She thought of the children she had seen in the Shrine City, playing in the ruins while their parents cleared rubble. She thought of Valdane's tortured confession. "Why would you help me?" Diana asked carefully. Ileana's expression was grave. "Because the alternative is worse. The Monkey Emperor will seek to control you or destroy you. In either case, you become a weapon in wars that are not yours to fight. You deserve better. Your reality deserves to have you back." "And what of the people here?" Diana gestured to the fortress around them. "What of those who suffer under systems they see no way to change?" The Farseer's eyes flickered with something that might have been sadness. "They are not your responsibility. You cannot save a galaxy that has chosen damnation. All you can do is save yourself and return to where you belong." Diana closed her eyes, thinking of everything she had seen, the cruelty and the courage, the darkness and the desperate faith. The people trapped in a system so vast and terrible that even questioning it was heresy. She thought of what her mother had taught her, that a warrior's duty was not to the easy fights but to the necessary ones. When she opened her eyes, her decision was made. "I thank you for your offer, Farseer, but I cannot accept. If I leave, nothing here changes. These people will continue to suffer, continue to believe there is no alternative to their suffering. Someone must show them that another way is possible, even if that way is difficult and dangerous." Ileana's expression shifted from surprise to horror. "You would throw away your chance at freedom? Your chance to return to paradise? For them?" She gestured dismissively at the humans surrounding them. "They will not thank you. They will likely kill you. The anathema upon the golden throne will corrupt or destroy you. There is no happy ending in this choice." "Perhaps not," Diana agreed. "But there is a right choice, and that is enough." The Farseer stared at her for a long moment, then shook her head slowly. "You are either the bravest being I have encountered, or the most foolish. Perhaps both. Very well. I have offered you escape and you have refused. But know this, daughter of clay, the Emperor is not what you think. When you stand before the Golden Throne, you will understand the true horror of what rules this Imperium. I only hope that knowledge does not break you." With that, Ileana vanished, simply ceasing to exist in one instant. The Eldar outside the fortress withdrew, their ships lifting into the sky and disappearing into the webway. Valdane approached Diana slowly, his expression unreadable. "You had a chance to leave, to escape. Why did you stay?" Diana met his eyes squarely. "Because running from darkness only lets it spread. I stay because I must. Because someone must." For the first time since they met, Valdane smiled. It was a small, sad expression, but genuine. "Then you are either the greatest fool I have ever met, or the bravest soul in this cursed galaxy." He straightened, his official mask sliding back into place. "Lord Inquisitor Constantine Valdane hereby places the prisoner Diana of Themyscira under protective custody for transport to Holy Terra. She will be presented to the God Emperor for final judgment. All units, prepare for immediate departure." As Diana was led to the waiting transport, she looked back at the fortress one last time. Somewhere in its depths, people suffered and hoped and fought against impossible odds. Soon she would face their God and demand answers. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt only grim determination. Truth would be spoken, even before a throne of gold. Especially before a throne of gold. The black ship was a vessel designed to carry the Imperium's darkest cargo. Its hull was painted void black, marked only by the silver symbol of the Inquisition. Inside, its corridors were narrow and cold, lit by lights that gave off a sickly yellow glow. Diana walked those corridors in chains, though she suspected the adamantium links would snap like thread if she truly wished to break them. She wore them as a gesture of cooperation, nothing more. Inquisitor Valdane had assigned her quarters in the ship's detention section. The room was 10 feet by 10 feet, containing only a metal bench bolted to the floor and a viewing port the size of her hand. Through that tiny window, she watched the warp. It was nothing like the space she knew. Where the void between stars should have been black and peaceful, this place writhed with colors that hurt to perceive. Shapes moved in the distance, things that might have been creatures or might have been the universe's nightmares given form. The ship's crew avoided her section entirely. Only Valdane visited, bringing ration bars and water twice daily. On the third day of their journey, he lingered after delivering her meal. "You should not watch the warp," he said, gesturing to the viewing port. "Even through shielded glass, prolonged exposure can damage the mind." Diana turned from the window. "It does not affect me the way it affects your crew. I see it clearly, without the madness that seems to touch others. It is chaos, yes, but chaos is simply disorder. It can be understood." Valdane's expression darkened. "No, it cannot. The warp is not mere disorder. It is the reflection of every evil thought, every dark desire, every moment of suffering experienced by thinking beings across the galaxy. It is hell made manifest, and it hungers. The fact that you do not feel its touch immediately only means you have not yet understood what you are looking at." "Perhaps," Diana acknowledged, "or perhaps I am protected by something you do not yet understand." Their conversations had developed a strange rhythm over the journey. Valdane questioned her constantly, but no longer with the hostility of their first meeting. He seemed genuinely curious about her world, her philosophy, her unwavering belief in ideals that seemed impossible in his reality. In turn, Diana asked him about the Imperium, about the Emperor, about the choices that had led humanity to build such a brutal civilization. On the fifth day, Valdane brought her to a different section of the ship. They walked through corridors that grew progressively colder until Diana could see her breath misting in the air. Finally, they reached a massive reinforced door guarded by soldiers in armor she had not seen before. They were smaller than Space Marines but moved with similar precision. Their weapons were always trained on the door, never wavering. "Beyond this point lies the reason this ship exists," Valdane explained. "The cargo we transport to Terra with every voyage. I bring you here because you asked to understand the price of humanity's survival. You will see it now." The guards opened the door. Beyond lay a vast chamber that stretched the length of the ship. It was divided into thousands of individual cells, each one barely large enough for a person to stand. In each cell stood a human figure, locked in place by restraints that covered them from neck to ankle. Most were young, many were children. All of them had a distant, haunted look in their eyes. Diana felt her stomach clench. "Who are these people?" "Psychers," Valdane answered flatly. "Humans born with the ability to touch the warp. Without training and control, they become doorways through which daemons can enter our reality. A single untrained psyker can doom an entire world. These are the ones we have collected from across the Imperium. They are being transported to Terra for processing." "Processing," Diana repeated, the word heavy on her tongue. "What does that mean?" Valdane's face remained impassive, but Diana saw the pain in his eyes. "Most will be fed to the Golden Throne. The Emperor requires constant sustenance to maintain the Astronomicon, the psychic beacon that guides our ships through the warp. Without it, humanity's empire collapses. These psychers are that sustenance. They are sacrificed, roughly 10,000 every day, so that the rest of humanity may survive." Diana walked slowly down the central aisle between the cells. The psychers watched her pass with eyes that held no hope. She stopped before one cell containing a girl who could not have been more than 12 years old. The child's dark hair was matted with sweat, her face pale from fear or cold or both. "Hello," Diana said softly. "What is your name?" The girl flinched as if expecting a blow, then whispered, "Mara. My name is Mara." "I am Diana. Tell me, Mara, how did you come to be here? Tears began streaming down Mara's face. I made flowers bloom. In winter, when everything was dead, I touched the ground and flowers grew. My parents were so happy at first. Then the black ships came. They took me away. My mother screamed. My father tried to stop them, but the soldiers hurt him. They said I was dangerous, that I could kill everyone without meaning to. They said I had to go to the Golden Throne to protect my family. The girl's voice dropped to a whisper. I just wanted to make flowers. Diana reached through the cell bars and gently took Mara's restrained hand. The girl gasped at the touch, not from pain but from something else. You feel warm, Mara said wonderingly. Everything here is so cold, but you are warm like summer Sunday. Listen to me, Mara, Diana said, her voice firm but kind. You are not dangerous. You have a gift, and gifts are not evil simply because they are rare or misunderstood. What happens to you is not your fault, and it is not justice. Valdane's hand fell on Diana's shoulder, pulling her back. Do not give her false hope. It is crueler than honesty. Diana turned on him, and for the first time since her arrival, true anger blazed in her eyes. False hope? You call it false hope to tell a child she has worth beyond her use as fuel? You call it cruel to acknowledge that this is murder dressed in necessity? I call it reality, Valdane shot back. Yes, it is terrible. Yes, it haunts my dreams. But the alternative is worse. If the Astronomicon fails, if the Emperor dies completely, humanity will be divided and conquered within a generation. Every world will fall to chaos or xenos, or simply to isolation and slow decline. 10,000 deaths a day to prevent billions of deaths is mathematics, not morality. There must be another way, Diana insisted. Have you looked for alternatives? Have you tried to train these psychers to help them control their abilities? Of course we have, Valdane said tiredly. The ones with sufficient strength and discipline become sanctioned psychers, serving the Imperium in various roles. The Adeptus Astra Telepathica trains thousands, but for every one who succeeds, 10 fail. And when they fail, they do not simply die. They become portals for demonic invasion. I have seen entire cities consumed because one psyker lost control at the wrong moment. The risks are incalculable. Diana looked back at Mara, who was watching their argument with wide eyes. Then the risks must be calculated better. Systems must be improved. But grinding children into fuel because the current system is inadequate is not acceptable. It can never be acceptable. Acceptable or not, it is necessary, Valdane stated. And that is the difference between your reality and ours. We do not have the luxury of rejecting necessary evils. Their debate was cut short by alarms screaming through the ship. The Vox speakers crackled with urgent reports. All hands to battle stations. Unknown contacts approaching. Multiple warp signatures detected. Valdane and Diana rushed to the bridge, the guards making no effort to stop her. The ship's captain, a grim woman with augmented eyes, was barking orders to her crew. Hololithic displays showed their vessel surrounded by contacts that flickered in and out of sensor range. Identity unknown, the sensor officer reported. Ship configurations do not match any known Imperial, Chaos, or Xenos patterns. They are attempting to establish communication. Put it through, Valdane commanded. The main view screen flickered to life, showing a figure that made Diana's breath catch. It was humanoid, but clearly not entirely human anymore. Its body was a fusion of flesh and machine, with cables and cybernetic components integrated seamlessly into living tissue. But the face, despite its augmentation, was familiar. It resembled her own features, twisted and perfected by cold logic rather than natural growth. Greetings, humans of the Imperium, the figure said, its voice a harmonic blend of organic and synthetic tones. I am Nubia 7, representative of the Kryptonian Collectorate. We have detected Diana of Themyscira aboard your vessel. She possesses genetic material of extreme value to our expansion protocols. Surrender her immediately, and your ship will be allowed to continue its journey unmolested. Diana stepped forward, her chains clinking. I am Diana. Who are you? What is this collectorate? Nubia 7's expression did not change. We are what the Amazons became in our reality. When Themyscira fell to forces beyond its ability to resist, the survivors chose adaptation over extinction. We integrated technology from conquered civilizations. We optimized our biology. We removed the weaknesses of emotion and individualism that made us vulnerable. Now we span multiple realities, gathering genetic templates and technological innovations to fuel our continued evolution. You're saying Amazons became this? Diana gestured at the figure's cybernetic body. Became conquerors who harvest others like resources? We became survivors, Nubia 7 corrected. Sentiment is evolutionary baggage. Compassion is a luxury that leads to extinction. We learned this truth through suffering. Now we offer you the chance to learn it without the pain. Join us willingly. Your pure genetic template, uncorrupted by our reality's integration, will allow us to correct drift in our population. In return, we will grant you immortality and power beyond your current comprehension. And if I refuse, then we will take what we need by force. Your preferences are noted but ultimately irrelevant to our operational objectives. Valdane moved to Diana's side, his bolt pistol drawn. This vessel travels under the authority of the Holy Inquisition. Any attack will be considered an act of war against the Imperium of man. Nubia 7's augmented eyes focused on Valdane with clinical disinterest. Your Imperium has been analyzed. Your military capabilities are significant but not insurmountable. Your Emperor is a powerful psychic entity, but ultimately limited by his physical deterioration. We have encountered and integrated civilizations far more advanced than yours. Stand aside, human. The view screen went dark. Immediately, the ship shuddered as weapons fire impacted against void shields. The collectorate vessels attacked with precision, targeting specific systems rather than attempting to destroy the ship outright. They wanted Diana alive and intact. Return fire, the captain ordered. All batteries engage. Diana moved to the bridge's exit. I need to stop this. Your crew should not die for me. Valdane grabbed her arm. If you go out there, they will take you. You heard what they intend. Then I will resist them, Diana replied simply. But I will not hide behind others while they fight in my place. Before Valdane could argue further, a section of the bridge's outer wall simply vanished, not exploded or breached, but ceased to exist as if it had never been there. Through the opening came figures in armor that flowed like liquid metal. They moved with inhuman speed and coordination, disarming the bridge crew before anyone could react. At their center walked a figure even more heavily augmented than Nubia 7 had been. This one stood 7 feet tall, its body a perfect fusion of Amazon physiology and advanced cybernetics. Where Diana's armor was colorful and decorative, this being's armor was purely functional, covered in tools and weapons integrated directly into its frame. It studied Diana with eyes that glowed with soft blue light. Diana of Themyscira, it stated. I am Artemis Prime, combat coordinator for this extraction operation. You will accompany us peacefully, or we will disable your motor functions and transport you unconscious. Choose. Diana's hands moved to her bracers, but before she could remove them, Artemis Prime moved. The cybernetic Amazon crossed the distance between them in a blur, its augmented reflexes making it nearly as fast as Diana herself. They collided in the center of the bridge, their impact cratering the metal floor. Diana had fought countless opponents in her life, from gods to monsters to fellow Amazons in training, but Artemis Prime fought with a precision that was inhuman in its calculation. Every move was optimized, every strike targeting pressure points and weak spots with computer-guided accuracy. Diana blocked a strike aimed at her neck, countered with a palm strike to the chest, only to have Artemis Prime twist at an angle that should have been impossible for organic joints. You fight well, Artemis Prime observed, its voice calm despite the violence of their exchange. Efficiency rating, 87%, but you are limited by emotional restraint. You pull your strikes to avoid killing. We have no such limitations. Diana caught the cybernetic Amazon's wrist, using its own momentum to throw it through a support pillar. The metal bent under the impact, but Artemis Prime rolled to its feet without apparent damage. You are right, Diana admitted. I do not wish to kill you, but that does not mean I will allow you to take me. Their battle continued across the bridge, with each combatant testing the other's capabilities. Diana realized with growing concern that Artemis Prime was not trying to defeat her, merely gathering data on her fighting style and physical capabilities. Every exchange gave the collectorate more information about her strengths and weaknesses. Then, the bridge's lighting changed, shifting from the normal harsh white to a golden glow that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Every human on the bridge, from Valdane to the lowliest crew member, fell to their knees as if compelled by invisible force. Even the collectorate soldiers paused, their sensors reading energy signatures they could not classify. A presence filled the room, massive and terrible and utterly beyond mortal comprehension. It did not speak with words, but with thoughts that impressed themselves directly onto consciousness. Diana felt it wash over her like a tidal wave of pure will. The presence was examining her, judging her, and she understood with sudden clarity that this was the Emperor of mankind, reaching across the void to intervene personally in this confrontation. The golden light focused on Artemis Prime, intensifying until the cybernetic Amazon's armor began to smoke. Systems overloaded and failed as psychic energy beyond any rating burned through circuits designed to resist conventional attacks. Artemis Prime attempted to retreat but found itself frozen in place, held by will alone. "This one is under my protection." The presence communicated, and every being on the bridge understood the message simultaneously. "She will be brought before the Golden Throne for judgment. None shall interfere with this decree." The other Collectorate soldiers attempted to aid their coordinator, but the golden light expanded, engulfing them as well. Their advanced technology proved useless against psychic force of this magnitude. One by one, they collapsed, their systems burned out from the inside. Then, as suddenly as it had arrived, the presence withdrew. The golden light faded, leaving only normal illumination. Artemis Prime lay motionless on the deck, its body intact but its cybernetic components completely dead. The other Collectorate soldiers were in similar condition. Diana looked at Valdane, who was slowly rising to his feet. His face was pale, his hands shaking. "That was the Emperor," he whispered. "Direct intervention. I have served for 40 years and never witnessed such a thing." The captain checked her instruments with trembling hands. "The Collectorate vessels are withdrawing. They are breaking off engagement and translating back into the warp." Diana moved to where Artemis Prime lay. The cybernetic Amazon's eyes were open but unseeing, its consciousness trapped in a body that no longer functioned. She felt pity for this twisted version of her sisters, these Amazons who had chosen survival over their souls. "What will you do with them?" she asked Valdane. "The Mechanicus will want to study them," he replied. "Technology from another reality, even if damaged, is priceless." He paused, studying Diana with new intensity. "The Emperor intervened directly to protect you. Such action is unprecedented. Whatever judgment awaits you on Terra, it will be momentous." The rest of the journey passed without incident. Diana returned to her cell, but now she understood that the chains she wore were meaningless. If the Emperor himself had marked her for judgment, no force in this reality could prevent her from reaching Terra. She spent her remaining time speaking with Mara through the bars of the child's cell, telling her stories of Themyscira, of a place where children with gifts were trained and treasured rather than feared and consumed. On the final day of their journey, as Terra came into view through the tiny viewport, Mara whispered a question. "When you meet the Emperor, will you tell him about us? About what happens here?" Diana took the child's hand one last time. "I will do more than tell him. I will demand he answer for it. The powerful must always answer to truth, no matter how mighty they believe themselves to be." Valdane came to collect her as Terra filled the view screen. The birthplace of humanity was nothing like Diana had imagined. Where she had expected beauty, she saw only endless industrial sprawl. Where she had hoped for signs of thriving life, she saw orbital factories and defense platforms. The planet itself was armored, wrapped in layer upon layer of fortifications built over 10,000 years of paranoid preparation. As their ship descended toward the Imperial Palace, Diana made herself a promise. She would face the Emperor not as a supplicant, but as an equal, one warrior to another. She would speak truth to power, even if that truth was unwelcome. And she would not leave Terra until she had answers about Mara and the thousands like her, children ground into fuel to maintain a system that seemed determined to consume everything it touched. The ship docked at an orbital station. From there, a heavily guarded transport would take them to the surface, to the palace, and ultimately to the Golden Throne itself. Diana walked toward her destiny with her head high, carrying hope into the heart of an empire that had forgotten its meaning. The Imperial Palace stretched across an entire continent, a structure so vast that weather patterns formed in its upper spires. Diana walked through corridors that seemed designed to make visitors feel small and insignificant. Statues of space marines rose hundreds of feet tall, their stone faces frozen in expressions of eternal vigilance. Cathedral spaces opened every few miles, each one large enough to hold tens of thousands of worshippers. Yet despite all this grandeur, Diana saw the waste. Golden decorations that could have fed cities. Marble imported from distant worlds at costs she could barely imagine. Resources poured into monuments while people starved in the levels below. Valdane walked beside her, his expression unreadable. They were escorted by Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's personal guard. These warriors wore golden armor that seemed to glow with inner light, and each one stood over 7 feet tall. Their weapons were works of art that could split mountains, yet they carried them with casual ease. Diana noted that unlike the Space Marines she had seen, these Custodes moved with fluid grace. They were not merely soldiers, but artists of war, each movement precise and purposeful. At every checkpoint, Valdane presented credentials written on parchment that seemed older than worlds. Tech priests examined them with scanning equipment that hummed and clicked. Psychic probes touched Diana's mind like curious fingers, recoiling when they encountered whatever protected her from the warp. Each verification took longer than the last, as if the palace itself was reluctant to grant them passage. After hours of walking, they reached a door that dwarfed everything Diana had seen before. It was adamantium 3 feet thick, inscribed with symbols that hurt to look at directly. The symbols seemed to shift and writhe, spelling out warnings in languages that predated human speech. Before it stood a full company of custodes, 50 warriors in perfect formation. The shield captain, identifiable by additional decorations on his armor, stepped forward. His voice resonated with authority that made even Valdane straighten unconsciously. The anomaly will proceed alone from this point. All others must wait. Valdane moved to protest, but the shield captain raised one hand. These orders come from the throne itself. They are not subject to debate or negotiation. Diana placed a hand on Valdane's shoulder. It is all right, Inquisitor. Whatever happens beyond this door, it happens because it must. Valdane met her eyes, and Diana saw fear there, not for himself, but for her. The Emperor is not what people imagine, he said quietly. He is power beyond mortal understanding, but also hunger, desperation, and pain beyond measure. Do not expect mercy or compassion. Expect only truth, and truth can be the cruelest thing of all. I came seeking truth, Diana replied. I will not turn from it now. The massive doors swung open with impossible silence, given their tremendous weight. Beyond lay a corridor that seemed to stretch into infinity, though Diana's eyes told her it was perhaps a mile long. The walls were lined with more custodes, standing so still they might have been statues. The air grew heavy as she walked, pressing against her like deep ocean water. She recognized the sensation as psychic pressure, the weight of a consciousness so vast it warped reality simply by existing. The corridor opened into a chamber so large its boundaries were lost in shadow and distance. At its center stood the golden throne, a construct that was part machine, part psychic architecture, and part something else entirely that Diana's mind struggled to categorize. It rose hundreds of feet into the air, a mountain of golden metal and crystal, pulsing with energy that made the air shimmer. Upon the throne sat what remained of the Emperor of mankind. His physical body was barely recognizable as human anymore. 10,000 years of constant psychic strain had reduced his flesh to a withered husk, kept alive by technology that hummed and clicked with each labored breath. Cables as thick as Diana's arm connected him to the throne, feeding him the psychic essence of the sacrificed psychers while simultaneously draining his power to maintain the Astronomicon. Yet despite the ruin of his body, his presence was overwhelming. Diana felt his consciousness fill the chamber like an ocean filling a cup, vast and terrible and impossibly ancient. She walked forward until she stood at the base of the throne, then stopped. She did not kneel. The Emperor's attention focused on her, and Diana gasped despite herself. It was like being examined by a sun, a consciousness so bright and burning that it threatened to consume everything it touched. But she did not look away. She met that terrible gaze with her own, standing tall and unafraid. Communication came not in words but in concepts impressed directly onto her mind. Diana of Themyscira, daughter of clay given life by gods that do not exist in this reality. You stand before me, marked by powers older than human civilization. Explain yourself. Diana took a deep breath, centering herself the way she had been taught on Themyscira. I am Diana, princess of the Amazons, champion of my people. I came to this reality by accident, through forces I do not fully understand. Since my arrival, I have sought only to protect the innocent and stand against darkness. I have harmed no one who did not first threaten others. I have spoken only truth. I ask only to be judged fairly for my actions, not condemned for my origins. The Emperor's presence expanded, and suddenly Diana was seeing visions. She saw the Emperor's past, a being who had walked among humans since before recorded history. She saw him guide civilizations, topple tyrants, and shepherd humanity through ages of darkness. She saw his vision of a unified species, free from superstition and fear, reaching toward the stars with science and reason as their guides. Then she saw it all fall apart. The Horus Heresy, when half his Space Marine legions turned traitor, the battle that left him mortally wounded and bound to the Golden Throne. 10,000 years of slow decay, watching his dream of enlightenment warp into the Imperium's current state, a fascist theocracy built on the worship of a being who had always rejected divinity. "You see what I have become," the Emperor communicated. "A prisoner of my own creation, I sought to free humanity from the tyranny of belief, yet now trillions worship me as a god. I built an empire of reason, yet it has become the most irrational civilization in human history. Everything I fought against has come to pass, using my own face as its symbol." Diana felt unexpected sympathy for the being before her, but she did not let it soften her resolve. "Then why do you allow it to continue? Why not speak truth to your followers? Tell them they have corrupted your vision." "Because the alternative is extinction," the Emperor replied, and Diana felt his anguish like a physical blow. "The warp has become so corrupted that faith is the only shield that works against it. The very superstition I sought to destroy is now humanity's only protection. I could dissolve the Imperium, proclaim the truth, and within a generation chaos would consume every human world. So I endure, sacrificing my ideals and my humanity itself to preserve the species I swore to protect." Diana walked closer to the throne, ignoring the custodies who tensed at her approach. "And the children? The psychers sacrificed daily to feed your throne? What of them?" The Emperor's presence flickered, and Diana sensed something she had not expected. Shame. A necessary evil. Without the Astronomicon, human civilization fragments. Without my psychic beacon, ships cannot navigate the warp. Billions would die in isolation, so I consume thousands daily to save billions. It is mathematics, not morality. "It is both," Diana countered. "And the mathematics is built on a flawed premise. You assume the current system is the only option. But have you truly looked for alternatives, or have you simply accepted this horror because changing it seems too difficult?" For a long moment, the Emperor was silent. When he responded, his thoughts carried a weight that made the chamber's very air thrum. "You dare question me? You, who have been in this reality for mere days, presume to judge choices made across 10 millennia?" Diana did not flinch. "Yes, I dare. Because someone must. You are so powerful that none of your servants can speak honestly to you. They either worship you blindly or fear you completely. But I am not your servant. I am not from this reality where you rule supreme. I can see you clearly without the weight of 10,000 years of conditioning. And what I see is a being of immense power who has become paralyzed by his own certainty." The Emperor's presence surged, and psychic force pressed down on Diana like the weight of worlds. She felt him trying to dominate her, to bend her will as he had bent countless others. But her divine nature, forged by gods outside this reality's rules, resisted. The pressure built until the air itself cracked with energy, but Diana remained standing. "Impossible," the Emperor breathed. "Nothing resists my will. Nothing." Diana's voice remained steady. "I resist because I must. Because truth requires it. You asked me to explain myself. Now I ask the same of you. Explain how grinding children into fuel serves your original vision of human enlightenment. Explain how an empire built on fear and suffering represents progress. Explain how you can claim to protect humanity while creating a system that devours it from within." The psychic pressure vanished suddenly, and Diana staggered slightly from its absence. When the Emperor's thoughts came again, they carried a quality she had not heard before. Uncertainty. "You remind me of someone," he communicated. "Long ago, before even the heresy, there was a woman who spoke to me as you do now. She refused to bow or worship. She called me to account for my choices. I had her executed for insubordination." A pause. "I have regretted that decision for 10,000 years." Diana felt the Emperor's consciousness shift, showing her new visions. She saw the old ones, the ancient beings who had created races as weapons during the war in heaven. She saw them craft the Eldar from base matter, making them beautiful and terrible and ultimately doomed. She saw gods and civilizations rise and fall, each one convinced of its righteousness, each one leaving ruins and regret. Your creators were the old ones, the Emperor explained. The Amazons, the gods of Olympus, all of it echoes from their experiments in another reality. They made you to be warriors, just as they made the Eldar. And like the Eldar, you will eventually learn that being created for a purpose does not mean that purpose was wise or good. Diana processed this revelation. The gods she had known, the mother who had shaped her from clay, all of it was the work of beings who had played with life like children with toys. Yet she found her resolve unchanged. Then I am even more determined to choose my own path. If I was made as a weapon, I will be a weapon that cuts for justice, not for the whims of ancient powers. The same choice stands before you, Emperor. You were not born to be a god or a tyrant. You chose to guide humanity. You can choose differently now. You understand nothing, the Emperor replied, but his certainty was cracking. The forces arrayed against humanity are beyond your comprehension. Chaos gods that feed on emotion itself. Tyrannid hive fleets that consume entire galaxies. Ancient machines that seek to harvest all organic life. Orcs that exist only for war. Against such threats, the Imperium's cruelty is not evil but necessity. Diana shook her head. Evil committed from necessity is still evil. It still scars the soul. It still corrupts everything it touches. Yes, this reality is harsh. Yes, the threats are terrible. But if humanity must become monstrous to survive, then what exactly is being saved? A species that has forgotten how to be human is already extinct in every way that matters. The Emperor's presence withdrew slightly, and Diana sensed him truly considering her words for the first time. When he spoke again, his thoughts were quieter, more personal. What would you have me do? Release my grip on the Imperium? Let the careful balance collapse? Billions would die in the resulting chaos. I do not have all the answers, Diana admitted. But I know that change must begin somewhere. It must begin with choosing to see another path, even when the current path seems easier. She paused, then continued with fierce conviction. I will make you a proposal, Emperor. Not as a servant or a supplicant, but as one warrior to another. Speak, the Emperor commanded, and Diana sensed genuine curiosity behind the word. I will not serve you. I will not bow to your Imperium or accept its methods as necessary. But neither will I abandon the people of this reality to the darkness. I will fight chaos and protect the innocent. I will defend humanity from external threats. But I will also challenge the Imperium's cruelties, including yours. I will be your conscience, the voice that speaks uncomfortable truths that your servants dare not utter. If you truly protect humanity, you should welcome such accountability. The chamber fell silent for what felt like an eternity. Diana could feel the Emperor's vast consciousness wrestling with her proposal, examining it from every angle. Finally, his thoughts came, carrying a complexity of emotion that surprised her. For 10,000 years, I have ruled with absolute authority. I have made every decision, shouldered every burden, accepted every sacrifice, and in doing so, I have become the very thing I swore to prevent. A tyrant who permits no dissent, no question, no alternative to my vision. The Emperor's presence focused on Diana with laser intensity. You offer something I have not had since before my internment. Someone who can say no to me and survive to explain why. Someone who can point out when my choices serve the Imperium but betray humanity itself. This is either the greatest gift or the greatest threat I have encountered in millennia. It is both, Diana replied. Truth always is. The Emperor's thoughts carried something that might have been amusement. Very well, Diana of Themyscira. I accept your proposal, with conditions. You will operate independently but under observation. You may challenge imperial policy, but you will not actively work to destroy the Imperium. You will defend humanity from external threats while advocating for internal reform. You are neither saint nor heretic, but something new. A truth seeker, empowered to speak uncomfortable realities even to the highest authorities. Diana felt something shift in the air around her, a sensation like reality itself recognizing a new truth. And the children? The Psykers sacrificed to your throne? I will grant you custody of a small number, the Emperor conceded. Prove that they can be trained to control their abilities safely. If you succeed, Perhaps alternatives to the current system can be developed. If you fail, the deaths that result will be upon your conscience. I accept that responsibility, Diana said without hesitation. I also ask for one specific child, Mara, who grows flowers and dreams of seeing her parents again. The Emperor was silent for a moment, then his thoughts came tinged with something that might have been approval. Granted, she will be yours to train and protect. Do not fail her, Diana. The burden of mercy is heavier than the burden of cruelty, for mercy makes you responsible for all that follows. Diana bowed her head slightly, not in submission but in acknowledgement. I understand, Emperor, and I will not fail. The vast presence began to withdraw, the psychic pressure easing from the chamber. But before he released her completely, the Emperor communicated one final thought. You have done something today that I believed impossible. You have made me question certainties I held for 10,000 years. Whether that proves to be salvation or damnation remains to be seen. Go now, Truth Seeker. Build your sanctuary. Train your students. Show this galaxy that another path is possible. I will be watching with interest to see if hope can survive in the darkness, or if the darkness will consume it as it has consumed everything else. Diana turned and walked from the throne room with her head high. The custodies watched her pass with expressions she could not read behind their helmets. Valdane waited for her in the corridor beyond, his face drawn with tension. You survived, he said simply. I was not certain you would. The Emperor and I have reached an understanding, Diana replied. I am to be given a chance to prove that compassion can coexist with survival. It is more than I dared hope for. They walked through the palace in silence for a time. Finally, Valdane spoke quietly. What you do now will set precedent for millennia to come. The Imperium has never tolerated independent actors, especially those who question its methods. You will face opposition from every quarter. The Inquisition, the Ecclesiarchy, the High Lords themselves will see you as a threat. Diana smiled, and it was the first truly happy expression Valdane had seen on her face. Good. A truth that faces no opposition is not a truth worth speaking. I came to this reality by accident, but perhaps there are no true accidents. Perhaps I am here to show that even in hell, you choose how you fight. Within days, Diana had established a sanctuary on a frontier world called Sanctuary Prime. It was a harsh place, constantly threatened by minor Xenos raids and warp storms, perfect for warriors who needed to learn both strength and compassion. Mara was the first student she brought there, the child weeping with joy when Diana released her from the black ship. Others followed slowly, psychers who had been condemned to the throne but were granted reprieve at Diana's request. She trained them as she had been trained on Themyscira, teaching them to embrace their gifts rather than fear them. She showed them how to draw on the warp's power without opening themselves to corruption, using techniques of mental discipline that predated chaos itself. Some failed, overwhelmed by the very powers they sought to control. But many succeeded, becoming a new kind of warrior, psychers who served not from compulsion but from choice, who wielded their abilities with precision and honor. Word of her work spread slowly through the Imperium. Some called her saint, others heretic. The Inquisition watched with suspicion while common citizens whispered prayers to the woman who showed mercy to the condemned. Diana ignored all titles, good and bad, focusing on the work before her. On the sanctuary's first anniversary, she stood before her students in a training yard built from the ruins of an old fortress. They numbered 20 now, young men and women learning to be more than fuel for a dying god. Mara stood among them, flowers blooming at her feet, where she had learned to channel her power into creation rather than destruction. You were told you were dangerous, Diana said to them. You were told your gifts were curses, that your existence threatened humanity. These were lies born from fear and misunderstanding. You are not weapons to be used and discarded. You are people with the potential for greatness. Never forget that. The students bowed their heads in acknowledgement. Diana looked beyond them to the stars, where countless worlds suffered under systems that claimed necessity justified any cruelty. She thought of the Emperor, trapped in his golden prison, so powerful yet so helpless to change the machine he had created. She thought of Valdane, haunted by orders he believed he must follow. She thought of all the people across this dark galaxy who had forgotten that another way might be possible. The great game continued. The war eternal raged on. But for the first time in 10 millennia, someone stood within the Imperium's borders, speaking truth to its power and living to do so again the next day. Wonder Woman, once champion of a brighter universe, had become the truth seeker of the grim darkness, carrying hope into an empire that had forgotten its meaning. Not as salvation, not as revolution, but as resistance against accepting damnation as inevitable. In the vast cathedral of her sanctuary, she had placed a symbol that merged her heritage with her new purpose. Not the imperial Aquila that demanded submission, but her own sign standing apart, an island of light in the darkness, neither consumed nor extinguished. The emperor watched from his throne and wondered if he had made a terrible mistake or taken the first step toward redemption. Only time would tell, and time was something even a god could not fully command. The answer would be written in the lives of those Diana trained, in the choices they made, in the example they set for a galaxy that desperately needed to remember what it meant to be human rather than merely survive. And so the story ended where all true stories begin, with a choice to do what is right, even when what is right seems impossible, with hope planted in the darkest soil, waiting to see if it could take root and grow toward distant light.